What is Monkey D. Dragon's devil fruit? Some say Wind Logia, some say Mythical Zoan. I think I finally figured it out, and it's something I've never seen anyone else bring up before. Our goal in this video is to see if we can finally solve the mystery of Dragon's devil fruit, because by solving this, we'll not only be able to figure out his abilities, but what if I told you the secret surrounding his fruit also reveals Oda's plan for Dragon's character and story, with so much foreshadowing going all the way back to our very first introduction of Dragon at Logtown. But first, make sure you subscribe and hit that bell like Luffy and Skypiea if you haven't already, so you never miss out on our future One Piece theory videos just like this. When it comes to a wind-based fruit, this actually makes so much sense for Dragon based on the many hints we've seen throughout both the manga and the anime. If you look at Dragon's first appearance during Logtown, and specifically in the anime, it shows us that there was some kind of wind manipulation here, with it looking like Dragon was pushing the Marines to help save Luffy. Smoker even says that Dragon vanished like the wind the last time that he saw him at Logtown, and in the anime it even makes it seem like he disappears when the lightning strikes into the wind. Smoker even points out that the Straw Hats would manage to escape with the wind helping them push away from the island at a faster pace like a tailwind. And Dragon has been shown many times in the anime with strong gusts of wind surrounding him, like when he first saved Sabo at the terminal, or when it's revealed by Ivankov that the wind blows when Dragon is facing the east blue as he thinks about Luffy. Now in chapter 1099, we've seen a resurgence in hype for Dragon's fruit being a wind-based power, as he tells Kuma, "Let the winds of fate guide you." And so if Dragon really does have ties to the wind, it makes this scene even better because it seems like he's telling Kuma to leave everything up to him, as he is one with the wind. Great wordplay by Oda, and he even draws Dragon pounding his chest, further implying that he's referring to himself as the wind. For example, we've seen Luffy call himself a rubber man, so in this case Dragon might be saying he's the wind man. But I also like that Oda includes this little air bubble or wind bubble popping out as he pounds his fist towards his chest. A very minuscule detail, but this actually might be Dragon using his devil fruit to create a tiny gust of wind, similar to how Luffy stretches to express himself sometimes, like when he smiles and he pulls his mouth apart. And I also wonder if it's really Dragon's philosophy to let the wind guide. And this might even tie deeper into a previous video that I made where I talk about how I believe Dragon has visited Shandora, because it's possible that he even learned this wind type of philosophy from their ancient beliefs surrounding nature in regards to the wind guiding you. So I'll leave that video in the description. It was my Esteban Child of the Sun video where I even show evidence to why Dragon may have met Luffy's mother in Shandora. Now you may already be convinced that Dragon has a wind-based fruit, but when researching for this video, I found even more interesting evidence and clues that Oda has subtly thrown in. For example, if we look at Dragon's ship, its themes are a combination of many important pieces for his character. A dragon figurehead, which represents his character since his name is literally Dragon. The name of his ship, the Viento Grama, represents wind, with Viento translating to wind in Spanish, and the word Grama coming from the ship inspired by the Cuban revolutions of the 1950s. So a windy dragon ship of revolution, fully embodying his character. Now if Dragon's ship is this integral to his overall character, that also makes me wonder about Luffy's ship, the Thousand Sunny. We didn't know it all at the time, but Luffy is now a confirmed sun god, making his ship a perfect fit for the man who will bring the dawn. And let's not forget about Garp's ship, because we all know that Garp, he has that dog in him. I think the idea of Dragon being a wind-based Logia is very valid and also has really cool possibilities, because as Dragon has now confirmed that he's spent some time in the Marines, it's possible he was looked at as a prodigy of the Marines as Garp's son. And so maybe he was handed the Wind Logia fruit at some point, considering we've seen plenty of admirals have Logia powers as well, like Aokiji, Akainu, Kizaru, and even Green Bull. I once theorized that the Marines and the world government go after these powerful fruits and hand them out to their most trusted, powerful rising stars, because we already know that they're interested in going after these powerful fruits like Nika, and then the fruits at God Valley like Kaido's dragon fruit and the Pawpaw fruit. But Dragon acquiring this fruit from the Marines and then dipping out would be hilarious, because we've also maybe seen something similar with Huzan, who already ate the ice fruit before he even became an admiral. But I could also see Dragon maybe getting that fruit when he was exploring on his own, maybe even when he went to Shandora like I speculated earlier. But I really do think that Dragon had to go on a journey of his own at first, when he was first starting out, when he first left the Marines. So who knows what kind of crazy islands he's been to. Now Dragon's Wind Logia fruit would allow him to create and be all forms of wind, which is already a ridiculous concept. And just to get an idea of what a Wind Logia could really look like, we have to ask, what even is wind? Wind is simply air movement, which means Dragon can move throughout the air, and I'm assuming could also levitate and fly through the sky. If he is all wind, this means that he could jump into a gust of natural wind but still continue to fly by producing his own wind behind him, pushing him further and further. And we also know that Logias have potential to teleport, like Kizaru, who can teleport with light, or with Green Bull, who can teleport by popping up and sprouting as a plant on the other side of a battlefield. But with wind, it sounds way more broken, because what is the limitation for the distance and the extent of Dragon's wind teleportation techniques? Could he potentially travel from island to island? I just have so many questions, because wind is just surrounding the entire area of the world. But then you can also think about the fact that there's definitely islands, there's definitely places in the sea where there's no wind. So I wonder if he would have to know if there's wind over there, because in Kizaru's case, he can just see that there's light. With Dragon, I'm not sure how he can know that there's wind that far away. But now where Dragon's Devil Fruit really comes in handy if it's wind is that while fighting, he could essentially have airbending techniques like Aang from The Last Airbender, creating blasts and gusts of powerful winds through kicks and punches. His attacks would have a very forceful knockback ability, sending enemies completely flying across the battlefield. Let's say Dragon kicks someone into the air with a powerful wind kick. He could then theoretically teleport Dragon Ball Z style into the sky and then hit them back into the ground. And he could even create an endless chain of this. Or he could push them up and then pull them back down with the wind. But you get the point, this wind could be such a fun and creative ability in One Piece, and considering that he's Luffy's father, I'd like to assume that Dragon would be really creative with this fruit. And so it seems like one of the best aspects to wind would be that Dragon would be very light and very fast and quick. I think of these attacks working in a similar way to Todo's Boogie Woogie from Jujutsu Kaisen, where you would almost likely need Future Sight or very quick battle analysis and reactions to predict Dragon's movements, because you'll never know when he's going to pull you down with the wind or actually teleport up there into the sky and knock you down physically. And another really cool thing about Dragon's wind powers would be that he can create Dragon Twisters and Tornadoes. I think a Dragon Twister could even be his signature move, since you know the whole dragon theme. Another element to Dragon's powers would be that extreme winds could also be strong enough to slice and cut up enemies, as we've already seen with characters like Mihawk, who use his sword's force to create sharp, destructive wind blasts. And another interesting part about wind is that it's very beneficial when sailing the seas, as it would also allow for incredible quick escapes, as we saw with the tailwind at Logtown that helped the Straw Hats. And sailing in this world can be very dangerous, because you never know, like I said earlier, where there's not going to be any wind to push you forward. So no wind means it's very difficult to guide a ship, but this means that Dragon wouldn't even really need a navigator in his crew, because his powers are essentially an auto navigation system while sailing. It would also be almost impossible to capture Dragon on the seas unless you have some kind of teleportation ability, because even if you send an entire fleet after him, he would still be able to split the wind current in between the sea at a certain point in favor of his own ship and resistance pushing back against his enemies. But arguably the best part about Dragon's powers is that it would allow him to head out to the milk store without leaving a single trace. Now, while I've heard other possible ideas for a wind-based fruit for Dragon, like some sort of mythical Zoan creature with wind-based elemental techniques, I really do think a wind Logia would be the most cool to see. We know how powerful these elemental Logias can be, and wind is just so much different from light and ice and magma, so I would be so excited if this was his power. But now let's take a step even further, because you see, while Dragon has the most connections to wind, there are other aspects to his powers that just don't make any sense whatsoever. There's one major power that's being completely overlooked, and what I believe Dragon's Devil Fruit is completely blows the power of wind out of the water, and that is a Storm Devil Fruit. You see, Monkey D. Dragon is like a terrifying storm. He's been building up, and it's finally time to release all the pain, all the anger, all the dedication and suffering that he's fighting for as the leader of the revolution. And Dragon isn't just fighting for himself, but to help the world make a change for those who suffered in the past. He's carrying on the wheels of the years of corruption that the world's faced up to this point, and he's hid in the shadows for decades with this mysterious cloaked hood. In fact, I believe that Dragon's mere existence as a storm is as crucial of a piece of world building and lore to Joy Boy, which you'll understand clearly towards the end of this video. But what's important to know now is that it's finally time for Dragon to unleash his massive storm on the world government, and that was when he finally declared war, attacking Marijua during the Reverie. In the anime, when we saw Roger's execution, it was a sunny, bright day at Logtown, but in a symbolic and eerie way, we see dark clouds immediately move over the island. The last person shown at Logtown here is Monkey D. Dragon, slowly walking, and he looks pissed. On one hand, the storm arising over the island immediately after Roger's death is meant to be symbolic of sadness, to set a sad tone after the passing of the Pirate King with Shanks and Buggy crying. What if I told you instead it was Monkey D. Dragon unleashing a storm on the entire island? You see, when Luffy journeyed to this exact same island at the end of the East Blue Saga, we see a bright, sunny, and perfectly clear day out on the island. The entire vibe is exciting and happy, but similar similar to all those years ago, again on the same island. By the time Luffy leaves, the island has turned into a massive storm. Rain, wind, and of course, lightning. Logtown is known as the place of beginning and end. It's not known as a place for unpredictable storms. And in both these scenarios, Dragon is the key factor here. He shows up at the end of both, in the end of the Roger execution and at Luffy's execution during the Logtown arc. So I believe that Dragon is the man who unleashed a storm both times with his devil fruit. In chapter 98, Nami notices the incoming storm. She says the air is different. The barometric pressure has dropped. A storm is coming. Apparently Nami has some kind of sixth sense to predict storms, but to everyone but Nami, this storm was unpredictable. In chapter 99, just as Luffy's about to be executed, we see a storm getting closer. The dark clouds are approaching faster, and Nami yells a storm is going to hit the island. I saw dark clouds in the eastern sky. This is all the calm before the storm. And just as Luffy's going to be executed, the dark clouds move right over the execution scaffold. And at the very last moment, lightning strikes. Now the storm is completely surrounding Logtown, just like that day at Roger's execution all those years ago. Dragon wasn't ready to fight with the Marines at Logtown the day of Roger's execution. He had to sit there and watch this moment, but this time with no real threats to deal with his son Luffy's life on the line. Dragon brings a storm to save Luffy's life. I mean, what are the chances that lightning strikes exactly on Buggy's sword to save Luffy? I understand it's a metal piece attracting lightning, but even Sanji says this was the work of a god. It's too good to be true, with even Luffy admitting that he's lucky. And don't get me wrong, Luffy is right. He was lucky that day, but not lucky because God sent a lightning bolt towards a rubber man saving him, but lucky that Monkey D. Dragon, Luffy's father, was nearby and was able to make it in time to protect his son. Soon after this, we finally see Dragon. And what's interesting is that just like that lightning saved Luffy, Dragon saves Luffy again. We see Windy Gus pushing Marines further, implying he's also created the lightning to save Luffy the first time. You tell me, is it a coincidence, a work of fate, or Luffy's luck coming in clutch as his father gives him a little push while he's off riding his ship into the Grand Line for the first time, attempting to make up for all the years that he was shopping for milk. Even Smoker says, is this a coincidence? And we already know the answer to that because in One Piece Rayleigh already told us there are no coincidences in this world. What I love about the anime is that it goes even further into detail to make it more clear to us that Dragon is manipulating this storm with the thunder and the lightning and the gust of wind. We can even see Dragon's face lighting up with the lightning as he smiles like a madman, and the gust of winds continue to get stronger, targeting world government turrets specifically. Smoker says, that man, what was that sudden gust? He appeared and disappeared like lightning that day at Roger's execution, as we see Dragon teleporting through the sky with lightning and thunder flashing, finally shooting onto the top of a platform as lightning, laughing and smiling. And this entire scene is still one of my favorite moments that stands out during the early East Blue part of One Piece. I wonder if Dragon knew that Luffy ate the Nika fruit, or at least knew that he was a rubber man so that he would be able to shoot lightning and blast him and still save him, since he knew that lightning wouldn't affect rubber. Now that you know that Dragon has these special powers to travel with huge storms, to create precise lightning blasts, to use gusts of wind, to fight hordes of enemies and disappear into the sky with lightning and thunder, what exactly is Dragon's devil fruit? Do you still think it's simply just a wind fruit? Or have I finally convinced you that it's actually a storm fruit? And if it truly is a storm fruit like I speculate, is it an ultimate Logia since it encompasses multiple elements into one? Or is it a mythical Zoan with the secondary elemental powers of a storm tied to it? This is the fun part, because now we can speculate even deeper and try to figure out the full capabilities of a storm-based devil fruit in One Piece. But first, if you want to support our dream of making YouTube a full-time career, consider donating with a super thing so we can continue to make even more content that you love to see. Alright, so one idea that I have to address is the idea that maybe a storm fruit doesn't have to be a Logia, but instead Logia-like. Think of Marco's devil fruit, which has some mythical blue fire Logia-like abilities. Could the storm be a byproduct of Dragon's true devil fruit, which is actually a mythical zone? The first idea to look at is the theory that Dragon is actually a literal dragon. I mean, it's right in the name, it's obvious, right? If we look at Kaido, he already has a dragon fruit, which is is why I personally believe that we won't see another dragon fruit, as it might be repetitive, because now if you include Momonosuke, that would make Dragon the third dragon in One Piece. And I also think it might be a little bit too obvious, but while I personally don't think it's going to happen, there's a decent amount of evidence. First, if you look at how Kaido enters Curry Town, he brings along a massive storm with him. And when fighting at Onigashima, it seems like Kaido's home island has horrible storms and unpredictable weather. Is it possible it's the effect of Kaido's dragon fruit following him wherever he goes? So we know Oda was inspired by Dragon Ball. And it's funny because I remember when I was a kid, me and my friends would always make the joke, who summoned Shenron, whenever we would see a really dark, cloudy day. If you've seen Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Z, you know that when you gather all 7 Dragon Balls to make a wish, a giant magical dragon known as Shenron appears in the sky. And when he's summoned, the skies turn black with dark clouds. And I bring it up because there's some dragons who are known for bringing storms with them whenever they arrive. Shenron is inspired by the Chinese dragon Shenlong, who is known for storms. And so maybe it's the connection for Dragon's name. And just like Shenron in Dragon Ball arrives in dark clouds and storms, that's exactly how we saw Monkey D. Dragon arrive in both Logtown appearances. Some fans believe that Dragon will have a different dragon fruit to Kaido's Uo Uo no Mi Shiryu, maybe a wind dragon or maybe a dragon fruit model Shenron. And the cool thing about a mythical zone is like Yamato's ice, Marco's blue flames, and Nika's rubber, you can add additional elements to the fruit. Specifically with Kaido's, we've seen him already show us so many different elements just like a storm dragon would be capable of. Kaido's shown us fire blast, flame clouds, lightning attacks, and even tornadoes. And back in Punk Hazard, if you remember, we saw Vegapunk researching dragons at some point, and that's where he would eventually recreate Kaido's dragon fruit with Momo's. But we actually saw multiple different types of dragons during the Punk Hazard arc. Maybe this was a foreshadowing that there was once different types of dragons that existed during the ancient past. I believe dragons could be tied to the ancient kingdom as they were wiped out alongside the other huge race of creatures like the Oars clan, the giant elephant tribe that Zunisha comes from, and even dinosaurs. And I believe Sea Kings survived these extinctions because they simply fled to the ocean. But maybe dragons were also perished during these extinctions during the Void Century. I made an entire video on this in the past, so I'll leave it in the description. So if Dragon's fruit is a fruit of a creature that fell from the ancient kingdom's downfall, that would be a great story with Monkey D. Dragon carrying on the will of the ancient kingdom, giving him the spirit of a mythical beast. Personally, I'm a sucker for dragons. I absolutely love them, and so I would love to see more dragons. If Dragon was a dragon, I wouldn't be mad at it. I'm just not sure we get a third dragon devil fruit in One Piece, which is the biggest reason why I don't think that he'll get this fruit. Because as we know, Oda loves to surprise us. Now what about the ultimate Logia, the Storm fruit? Ever since Logias were introduced, they were quickly seen as overpowered fruits, and now it's beginning to look like mythical Zoans are truly the most powerful type of devil fruit. So what would be the Logia fruit to put Logias back on top? Of course, a fruit that embodies multiple elements. Think about Kevin 11 from Ben 10 with multiple powers, or more simply put, the Avatar from The Last Airbender. Someone with so many different powers at his disposal. I mean, let's take lightning for example. Dragon could create huge lightning storms out of thin air and even become lightning itself. Basically a less specific version of Enel's fruit. This means that he could also shoot lightning out the sky, throw lightning bolts like Luffy, which by the way, that would be such a cool moment if we see them team up and he stockpiles Luffy with different lightning bolts and Luffy starts chucking them at enemies like he's Zeus. We saw some similar in Luffy's fight against Kaido when he caught lightning in the sky. So I'd really love to see this. And you may say Dragon becoming a temporarily lightning Logia like Enel is just so overpowered, as that seems like one of the strongest fruits in One Piece, but I don't think it would be so far-fetched. I mean, Law was able to copy one of Corazone's devil fruit abilities, figuring a way to use it through his own abilities. And so maybe the storm fruit would be a fruit that has to be the most refined fruit. It doesn't guarantee you'll become instantly the strongest character, but over time, if you master every single element, every single aspect to the fruit, it could be the strongest devil fruit in the entire verse. And this would also be similar to Luffy's, because I've seen a lot of people argue that Luffy's fruit isn't the best fruit unless awakened. Prior to the Nika awakening, most people wouldn't even place Luffy's fruit in the top 10. So dragons might be similar since a Storm Logia would entail so many different abilities, so many different nuances. It's a power that truly must be refined to be maximized. Another reason why I don't see Dragon having lightning as too ridiculous is because we've already seen Kaido and Big Mom, two Yonko level characters, utilize lightning even though it's nowhere near the main focus of their fruit's powers. I mean, Big Mom can seemingly create god versions of any element with her powers, so why not a character like Dragon if he has a storm fruit? I'm just going to assume that Dragon's going to be somewhere near Big Mom when we finally see him go all out. And what I love about lightning is that it not only looks cool, but it could also be used to burn his enemies like we saw NL use it. Dragon could also start fires, and and destruction, which is important for a revolution, and lightning most of all is very fast and powerful, making it one of the most go-to elements for a dragon. We already know he could essentially teleport with the wind, but we also know that he can teleport with lightning, as Smoker described. So he's just moving so fast and so dangerous throughout the battlefield. I mean, imagine if Dragon could infuse a tornado with also lightning, because when you think about a storm, you instantly think about wind and lightning, but what about the elemental powers that we haven't seen yet from Dragon? I mean, this guy coming in full force as a hurricane is one thing, but there's also different elements that people forget about, like hail or snowstorms, the ability to use ice attacks, and this would potentially give Dragon the ability to change the temperature in the air. A more obvious power that comes alongside a storm-based Devil Fruit would be water-based attacks as well, specifically rain manipulation and cloudy storm-based attacks. Overall, this gives an insane amount of versatility to Dragon's techniques and potential. For example, he could cloak himself in a heavy fog, where it makes it that you need some powerful observation Haki while fighting him. I mean, even fire could be potentially utilized indirectly, with Dragon creating fire with his lightning and then fanning the flames with his wind to create firestorm. And going back to a hurricane-based move, this could also be maybe his finishing move, his ultimate attack, a lightning-infused hurricane that explodes on impact. Since One Piece is a show out at sea, the world building is scattered with different islands across the world. So this giant tropical storm coming out of the sea and entering the battlefield would be the most devastating entrance to a war, similar to something like Whitebeard surfing a tsunami into battle. And just like earthquakes are a devastating godly power of natural disaster, hurricanes and tornadoes are also ridiculous powers. And then when you combine Haki on top of all of this, Dragon's potential reaches godly levels. We've already seen Luffy has the most powerful potential in Haki, as he's only 19 years old, launching battering guns at Kaido. And Garp is someone who had so much powerful Haki to the point where he was fighting sword users like Roger and Devil Fruit users like Whitebeard with his bare fists. The combination of raw physical genetics as a member of the Monkey D family with ridiculous willpower and Haki, and then you give him a top tier Devil Fruit on top of that, it makes Dragon the complete package, and arguably the strongest character in One Piece. I mean, he's a total combination of speed, strength, and defense, with different versatility to deal with any opponent that comes at him. Dragon is a character who can change the tide of a war very quickly, which is why I believe that the world government has always been very cautious to go to war with him. But aside from understanding his incredible power, what if I told you that Dragon being the storm itself would also give us a much deeper look into his character, which appears to be a true mystery. Dragon being the embodiment of a storm makes him similar to a prophetic figure like Joy Boy, and this ties all back to the will of D. You see, Dragon is D's storm, but not only in a literal way thanks to his Devil Fruit, but also in a more metaphorical way. And the reason why I believe this is because of an ancient phrase that brings fear to the celestial dragons. Corazon reveals to Law that the elders from his home of Marizua have always had a phrase for the D-Clan. Every time another D-Clan member would pop up through history, the elders would raise an eyebrow and murmur, "The D always brings a storm. Dragon D storm." It blew my mind when I realized this, a truly mind-blowing revelation, because it'd been right in front of us the entire time. Quickly, if you enjoyed this video so far, make sure to leave a like and share this video out to everyone in the One Piece community so we can get this theory out to as many people as possible. And if this video gets 3,000 likes, I'll let you guys choose the topic for a future video. So this storm that the Celestial Dragons talk about being represented through Monkey D. Dragon. He is this legendary prophesied storm the Celestial Dragons fear so much, the storm that the D-Clan is said to one day bring. I like to believe this saying of the D always bring a storm comes from a myth or a prophecy of sorts, a Celestial Dragon story from 800 years ago stating that the D will bring a powerful storm that will destroy the Celestial Dragons and rip them from the power they value so much. I believe this because the D are known as the enemy of the gods, and we know there are some sorts of prophetic destiny intertwining their fate with the Celestial Dragons. And to add to this, the Celestial Dragons are extremely superstitious. They are raised from a young age to fear the D-Clan members, and they're raised to believe that the D are these boogeyman-like figures who will eat Celestial Dragon children if they misbehave. And we even see the Gorosei saying that Sabo can now be a D member because he's tied to so many Ds by fate, like Luffy, Dragon, and now Vivi and Cobra. So they're always so heavily concerned with the will of D and the D-Clan. It's similar to how Orochi feared Toki's prophecy of the 9 samurai returning to one day defeat Orochi and free Wano. I believe Dragon being the storm is a metaphor to say that he's the culmination of hundreds of years of wills being passed on and inherited into this war. And the longer the storm builds, the more nasty and powerful it is when released. Dragon's revolution is very personal, but he's not only fighting for himself. Vegapunk reveals in chapter 1066 that Dragon hates war, but after the Ohara incident, Dragon realized he must fight for those like Professor Clover and the innocent people of Ohara who were unjustly attacked by the Gorsei's fear of the past history being uncovered. Dragon says, "I'll create a military force that can fight back. Just watch. I will change the world. Clover's death and Ohara's will won't go to waste." The government framed Ohara and Professor Clover's crime as threatening a war to overthrow the world governments, lying on his name just to try to justify their actions of the Buster Call. It's funny though because Dragon's almost saying, "You want a plot that aims to overthrow the government? Fine, I'll be the one to give you exactly what you asked for." I mean, not only is he inheriting Ohara's will, but even their fake will that was manipulated by the world government. And so I just think it would be funny if that one false headline was the moment that inspired Dragon to create a revolution and war with that exact same goal. Dragon is a man on a mission to change the world and defeat the celestial dragons, ripping them from the Holy Land at the top of the world. And just like Luffy truly believes he will become Pirate King, we can ask the same question just like the old man from his home village. Is it his dream or his destiny? Dragon may not even notice, but he is carrying on the legacy of the wars that were fought during the Void Century. And this is why Oda chose Dragon, a D-Clan member tied to Joy Boy, to lead the revolution. Joy Boy and Dragon D Storm, these two prophecies aligning that can make the celestial dragon shake in their boots. Oda once stated that if he could write a separate story, he would start a story with Dragon or Garp as the main character. It's possible that Dragon was once similar in personality to Garp and Luffy, but we can see how cold, focused, and serious Dragon has become. We can see how intense he is, even allowing Ginny to get captured and never going to save her. But it makes you wonder, what has Dragon been through that made him this way? What horrible crimes has he witnessed besides Ohara that made him truly hate the celestial dragons and truly hate war? All of Dragon's life work has come to a truly exciting conclusion, and there's a reason Oda's saving him for last. I can't wait to see that fearful look in the celestial dragon's eyes the day Dragon finally arrives at Merijoa with a giant black storm, as they fear him like these are the final days of some kind of religious prophecy. Their childhood nightmares are finally coming to reality. And another thing I love about Dragon's character is how he's a contrast to his old friend Dr. Vegapunk. I guess he's kind of a parallel but also a contrast in the same way. And by understanding this, it shows us how powerful of a character Dragon is and why he's one of the most compelling characters in the entire series. But before I dive into that, if you're a true Marshall D. Preach fan, consider supporting me on Patreon, which I'll leave a link to in the description. What you can find there is a Patreon exclusive chapter review as soon as I read the latest One Piece chapter, exclusive looks into upcoming theories and videos, and you'll even be added into a Patreon exclusive group chat to talk to me and other One Piece fans about the series we love. I'll be adding new ideas to our Patreon as time goes on. I love making videos and I love to make this a full-time career, but the truth is your favorite YouTubers are still just regular people who still need to pay the bills, and this Patreon will allow me to do that. Alright, so in chapter 1086, Dragon explains how he believes that Vegapunk would never create an ancient weapon like the Mother Flame which one-shot Leloucia. In chapter 1085, Sabo says this feels like hell, referring to the Gorosei and Imu as monstrous demons. He can instantly sense the sinister energy when he gets near this throne room. Now Vegapunk is an example of what happens when you let the devil itself tempt you with riches and you sell your soul to achieve your dream. And he now has to live with the regrets and consequences of what he did to people like Kuma, the horrible things he did to innocent children like King, and how he created the child slaves of the Seraphim while taking away their free will and basically forcing them to become child slaves of war. But most of all, Vegapunk's boldness making a deal with the devil has led to the downfall of an entire kingdom, Leloucia. It reminds me of that quote, "Fool me once, shame on you, and you know how the rest goes." Vegapunk has time and time again aided the evil Gorosei, helped the world government, and even years later, Vegapunk is still in a way tied to the world government. Now, Vegapunk is not fully evil. He's not exactly like the Gorosei. He's even disagreed and stepped up against Saturn. He's clearly shown he doesn't want to do everything that he's forced to do by them. At the same time, I don't think Vegapunk is fully innocent. Vegapunk does bear some kind of blame for his actions, because at the end of the day, this is the smartest man that we're talking about. After what he did to Kuma and King, you would think he wouldn't make the same choice with the Seraphim. But if we look at how Oda has tied Dr. Vegapunk and Dragon in the A-Cat arc, the contrast of Dragon to Vegapunk makes Dragon's character even more powerful, because it shows how his friend was tempted by evil to achieve quicker results through the world government funding, and over time Vegapunk himself has become corrupted. Even York, his own creation of himself, wanted to become a celestial dragon and turned on him. That was a hint of Vegapunk's deepest nature in my mind, a hint of evil greed that he tried to get rid of by exporting York into her own being. And so on the opposite side, we have Dragon's willpower power being so incredibly strong, not only was he not tempted to serve the Celestial Dragons and the world government taking the easy way out, but Dragon decided to go directly at their throats and fight directly against them. Vegapunk and Dragon both have ambition and good intentions. However, instead of doing things the hard way and building something from nothing over a long period of time, Vegapunk chose the shortcuts that sacrifices ethics and morality. I mean, just imagine how long and how much work it's taken to build up the Revolutionary Army. Imagine how many years of dedicated focus on one single goal it takes for Dragon to look at himself in the mirror and question every single day if what he's doing is worth it. This is a battle of pure conviction, but also the lesson of a powerful will and patience. Dragon and Vegapunk are both insane individuals, both outstanding in their own ways, and they've both gone down an extreme road. They're both visionaries who will change the future in many ways. They both have a similar end goal, as well as we know that Vegapunk doesn't want to work for the government forever, but they've taken two completely separate paths. Sometimes you can see Dragon's personality seeping out when he smiles like a madman, that iconic Will of D smile, but when he's not smiling, he has the most serious look on his face, stressed out and focused on the day-to-day work of being a leader of this rebellion. Dragon's story is sacrifice, patience, and focusing every single day on the bigger picture in the back of his mind, while he focuses on the little goals to get him there each day. And that is why I love Dragon. When he told Kuma to live without regrets in reference to Kuma choosing Bonnie over the Revolutionary Army, that was the moment I fell in love with his character, because he let Kuma follow his own path, but more importantly, it shows Dragon's philosophy on life. To do whatever you will regret the least will lead you to true fulfillment, and for Kuma, he would regret not raising Bonnie more than he would regret leaving the Revolutionary Army. Kuma still cared about the revolutionaries despite his decisions to raise Bonnie and join the world government, as we'd see glimpses of Kuma helping the revolutionaries without a word. But with Dragon, we see the complete opposite situation. Dragon's biggest regret in life would be to not change the world and lead this revolution, to not tear down the world government. And he believes in this so much that he even chose this over his own family. Just like Kuma still helps the revolutionaries occasionally, Monkey D. Dragon would show occasional glimpses of love for his family, like when he helped Luffy at Logtown. Dragon tells Kuma in chapter 1103 that a child is a parent's biggest weakness. And this hits even harder because Kuma knows this better than anyone else. He literally sacrifices everything for Bonnie. Kuma knows how much love there is for your own child, and so Dragon simply being around Luffy too much would definitely soften him. He wouldn't be as cutthroat and cold as he needs to be. He would potentially even lose focus, so abandoning Luffy was a necessary sacrifice for him to achieve his fullest potential with the Revolutionary Army. What I'm trying to say is this isn't exactly a Yasub, the sea is calling me situation. I bring all this up to showcase the stakes of Dragon's journey and the cost of what he's attempting to do. Just like Vegapunk sacrificed his own morality, Dragon had to make some serious sacrifices of his own. And this, on top of the Storm and Joy Boy connection, makes the moment that we see Dragon and Luffy meet all the more powerful. As he foreshadowed in the Enies Lobby arc, the day shall come when we shall meet. When Joy Boy, the god of liberation, and the Storm, the great revolution, unites, it might be the single most terrifying day in the last 900 years for the Celestial Dragons. If you enjoyed this video or anything I said, make sure to leave a like and share this video to support us. And if you want to watch a video on my favorite One Piece theory ever, click here where I reveal Oda's favorite anime and used it to solve One Piece's biggest mysteries. What exactly happened during the Void Century?